It is my pleasure to welcome you to the ninth section of the crash course Marketing, Market Oriented Business Management. In this last section of the crash course, we're dealing with communicating value. This is the fourth P of the marketing mix, promotion. Let's go back to the basics. What are we trying to do in business administration and, in particular, in marketing? At the end, we would like to have a profit. To get to this, to generate this profit, we need to influence the customers on the steps of the buying process. First, the customers need to know our brand is there. There needs to be brand awareness. They need to like our brand, meaning having a positive brand image. They need to buy it, and ideally they should buy it more often, more than once. So they should be loyal customers. If we multiply buying times buying frequency, we have our units that we're selling times the price is the revenue minus the cost is the profit. To come to these financial objectives, the blue ones, we need to influence we need to come to our market objectives, the maroon ones. And that is what communication aims to do. To either increase awareness or improve the brand image, push sales or increase brand loyalty, and of course, a combination thereof. So these are your objectives of marketing communication. There's quite a bit. The field of promotion or communicating value is rather wide. So what I would like to look at with you is conventional marketing communication, like classic advertising, a spot on the radio or commercial on the telly, an ad in a magazine or newspaper, and so forth. Unconventional communication, which is guerrilla marketing, online marketing, and personal selling. Ideal typically, not exclusively or necessarily, but ideal typically, the further you are on the left with your instruments here, you focus rather on awareness and image, the first two steps of the buying process I've just shown you. The further you go to the right, you focus rather on sales loyalty, the two later steps in the buying process. Let us start with conventional marketing communication. Conventional marketing communication entails all, if you will, classic and non-online mass communication activities of a company which are rather overtly aiming to influence the target group's buying behavior. You need to go through 3 steps or phases when you're planning and designing marketing communication. Firstly, you need to determine your communication budget. So how much money are we investing into our marketing communication? Then you have to come up with a media plan. Through which channels are we going? Are we going through the telly, radio, outdoor, whatever channel you have there? In other words, you need to allocate your communication budget to your communication channels. And finally, your communication, your adverts, your radio spots, your commercials, they should look great and should have an effect on the customers when there is contact. So we need to create and design the advertisements and the other means of communication that we're using. Before I have a deeper look at each of these phases or steps, I would like to introduce you to the main principle of advertising effects. We want to make contact to a target group with the advertisement. That should lead to direct advertising effects and to indirect advertising effects. So we make contact, our target group perceives the advertisement, and that should lead to advertising awareness and advertising image. In other words, the target group can remember the advertisement and likes the advertisement. This should then eventually lead to an improved brand awareness, image, purchase, and loyalty. Meaning more of our target group are aware of the brand, more of them like the brand or like the brand even more members of the target group purchase the brand, and more members of the target group are loyal to our brand, or the loyalty and the purchases are increased or strengthened. Let's dive deeper into the 3 steps of planning and designing marketing communication, and let's start with the communication budget. The objective of investing into marketing communication is to improve brand awareness and brand image, and eventually lead to increased sales in the form of purchases and repurchases. The latter means strengthening brand loyalty. How do these effects work? Depending on your budget. In this figure, you find on the x-axis the budget, communication budget, and the sales on the y-axis. You normally have a basic quantity that you can sell anyway, even without any form of advertising, with any investments into advertising. And then the more you invest in advertising, the more your sales go up. However, there are diminishing returns. At some point, you come to a saturation quantity and you can invest more and more and more billions of pounds into advertising. You won't get further up. So keep in mind, more is more in this case, but is really efficient. You have diminishing returns and you can't advertise your way through world domination. Now, jokes aside, one problem with determining advertising effects is carryover effects. You cannot be 100% certain if and how your campaign and your budget, your investments work. Think of a car. Just because you see a commercial of a car brand on the telly, you will not go to the dealership the next day and buy a new car. You will go to the dealership and buy a new car when you need one. And then perhaps the campaigns, the commercials and advertisements that were out the year before, the month before, they might have an effect by, oh yes, there was this car brand, I will buy this. So you might have carryover effects over time. And at this point, to have an effect in the market, it takes time, and you need more than one commercial, more than one radio spot, more than one advertisement out. It takes time. Let's dive into a few methods of communication budgeting, and that is resource-oriented budgeting, competition-oriented budgeting, and market-oriented budgeting. And for each, I will give you one strong particular method. Starting with resource-oriented budgeting, and here the percentage of sales method. It simply works it works very simply as you define a percentage of your revenue or profit that you will invest in marketing communication. Give you a simplified example. You say, we always spend 30% of our revenue in communication. That is a gold rule, and that stands for all times. So assuming you have a revenue of £1 million, then you assume 30% by your rule, always 30% investing, and then your communication budget is £300,000. That is very, very efficient. If that takes you longer than 5 minutes, perhaps something is wrong with you. The longest on this method is calling accounting or controlling and asking them, what is our revenue or what is our profit? and then you just apply your 30, 20, 10%, whatever your ratio is, and that's it. But the efficiency comes with a massive weakness. You can go into a downward spiral. So, lower sales through a regression or whatever will lead to a lower budget. And as I hopefully could just show you on the slide before, advertising has an effect on your sales. A lower budget means lower sales. Lower sales again means a lower budget, and so forth. And furthermore, you might miss market opportunities. For instance, some scholars and also practitioners advocate for anti-cyclic investments into communication, meaning when the industry or the whole economy is in a boom phase, all is growing, everybody has enough money, everybody's happy, advertising is not too important. To win market share, you should advertise in a recession or a downturn of the economy. There you win your market share, probably invest more, and this will reduce your profit. But then, when again the boom cycle comes, when all gets better, you have the larger market share, and there you get your fruits. So, very efficient, but if it's effective, it's the right amount that you invest in advertising or in conventional communication. Very questionable. The second approach to communication budgeting is the competition-oriented approach. We virtually ever have competition in our markets, so also with communication budgeting, it's a good idea to have the competition in mind and do not disregard the competition. As competition-oriented communication budgeting approach, I would like to introduce you to the Weinberg model. The underlying assumption of the Weinberg model is that the development of a market share of a company depends on its ratio of its advertising budget to its market share or revenue in comparison to its competitors. The central indicator of the Weinberg model is the indicator E. If E, I will show you or explain the equation how to calculate E in a moment. If E is larger than 1, the market share will grow. If E is smaller than 1, the market share will shrink. In the center of the slide, you see the equation. E equals our advertising budget divided by our revenue. And then this ratio we divide by the advertising budget of our competitors divided by their revenue. And if our ratio of advertising budget to revenue is better or larger than the ratio of advertising budget of our competitors to their revenue, then E will be larger than 1 and our market share will grow. If our ratio of advertising budget to revenue is smaller than the ratio competitors' advertising budget to competitors' revenue, E will be smaller than 1 and our market share will shrink. Let me give you an example for when the market share will grow. Assuming we have an advertising budget of £25,000 and we have a revenue of £100. Our competitors have an advertising budget of £100,000 and revenues of £500,000. If we calculate this, the first term will come to 0.25 and for competitors to 0.2. 0.25 divided by 0.2 is 1.25. A is larger than 1. We can assume our market share will grow. Example 2, market share will shrink. We assume again we have an advertising budget of £25,000 and revenue of £100,000. Our competitors still revenue 500,000, but now we assume they spend £150,000 on advertising. Then it is 0.25 divided by 0.3, that's 0.83. Now we can expect that our market share will shrink. The strength is, as I've mentioned earlier, we have the competition in our planning and we always need to pencil in the competition and their actions in the market. The weakness, however, is there's no guarantee that our company-specific requirements, how we should operate in the market, are taken into account. We are only orienting ourselves on our competitors. Now, thirdly, the market-oriented communication budgeting, which one might say is the most, if done correctly, the most effective form of communication budgeting, or most effective approach, but also you have to put quite a bit of effort in. Now, let's come to the objective and task method. What do you do there? You define your communication objectives, increasing the awareness, the brand awareness by 10%, or similar, or increasing sales by 5%, whatever your objective is. Then you determine how many contacts to the target group do you need through your advertising so that you achieve your objectives. You conduct the media planning, meaning booking, not just booking, but planning. How many commercials do you need to book on the telly? How many ads in magazines, newspapers, and so forth? From this media plan, you deduce your communication budget and then have a double check. Do we actually have the money? Is getting this communication plan to life financially feasible? Let me give you an example. Let's assume we have a target group of 1 million. We know, or we assume, that we need 10 contacts per person so that there is an effect. In total, we need 10 million contacts. To get to these 10 million advertising contacts, we can simplify the telly, radio, and out of home. Through the telly channels that we can book there, we can reach 3 million people, radio 5 million, out of home 2 million, so we come to our 10 million contacts. So we assume that the cost for booking the telly, radio, and out of home to reach 1,000 members, or to reach 1,000 contacts, is for the television £20, for radio 10, and for out of home 5. That comes to cost for the television 60,000, radio 50,000, out of home 10,000, and our campaign would then be 120,000. As I've said earlier, the strength of this approach is the most effective method to get virtually the perfect investment out. Of course, we will never be completely on point. And you can have a high probability that you will achieve your communication objectives. The weakness, however, is as the least efficient budgeting model. You definitely need to put quite some effort in, and it is demanding and requires quite a bit of expertise and market knowledge. Now, having the communication budget, it goes now to the media plan. So how do we allocate our communication budget to the communication channels? In other words, which communication channels, which media are we booking, and where do we place our communication? So as just said, what we want to do is allocating our communication budget to the communication channels through intermedia selection and intramedia selection. Intermedia selection is what are our media categories? It's the telly, the radio, the newspapers, magazines. Intramedia selection is then selecting specific media within these categories. Just assume we're saying newspaper, not for us, radio, we're going through the telly. That would be intermedia selection. And then what channel are we choosing? Is it ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, Sky? That would be intramedia selection. Always in life, you should operate and act goal-oriented. So what are the objectives of media planning? As usual in life, or say in business administration, you have effectiveness and efficiency. And then we add timing. First, let's come to effectiveness. We want to maximize our reach. We would like to contact as many members of our target group as possible. Furthermore, we would like to optimize our advertising pressure. Normally, it is not enough to contact your target group once to achieve a change in buying behavior. You need to contact the members of your target group more often. Therefore, we would like, with the optimum advertising pressure, to contact our target group as often as necessary to reach our communication effects. On the other hand, we have efficiency, cost effectiveness. Of course, we want to make a profit. That means the cost should not rise through the skies. We want to invest as little as possible to achieve our desired communication effects. Thirdly, the timing of our campaign. We would like to contact the right target group at the right time, so that we can reach the aforementioned objectives of effectiveness and efficiency. Let's go to effectiveness first. The key indicators of communication effectiveness are the impressions, so how many contacts do we have, the net reach, how many people did we contacted, the audience overlap, if we book more often than once, so that is the number of communication contacts of the same people when we're booking advertisements in different media or at different times. And then the frequency, the number of communication contacts per person. Think back of the advertising pressure I was just talking about. Now, with the impression net reach, there you can look at quantitative and qualitative reach. The quantitative reach is all of the contacts our advertisement has, regardless if these contacts are members of a target group or not. The qualitative reach is just the members of a target group. How many members of a target group could our advertisement contact reach? Simplified example here. Let's assume we're having an advertisement out in Magazine A and Magazine B. Magazine A has 100,000 readers and Magazine B has 150,000 readers. And 50,000 readers of these, they are reading A and B. So if we're having an ad out in A and B, we have impressions of 100,000 plus 100,000 equals 250,000. That's our total impressions. Assuming we have an overlap of 50,000, meaning 50,000 readers have read Magazine A and B. Then it's 250 minus 50,000. Our net reach is 200,000. Let's go to efficiency. The key indicator and criterion for efficiency is cost per mil. Cost per mil is the cost that we have to make 1,000 advertising contacts. It is calculated, cost per mil equals the cost of an advertisement divided by the impressions times 1,000. And then we have the price or the cost for 1,000 contacts through an advertisement in a medium. Again, here you can distinguish between quantitative cost per mil and qualitative cost per mil. Quantitative cost per mil is the money you have to invest to make 1,000 contacts, again, regardless if they are members of a target group or not. Whilst the qualitative cost per mil is the money you have to invest to make 1,000 contacts, but these 1,000 contacts are members of our target group. And advice for practice. In the end, the qualitative cost per mil, that is of relevance. We need to make contact, and we want to make contact only with our target group. All the rest doesn't help us too much. Give you an example. Let's assume our target group is in the age bracket of 18 to 40 years. We are considering booking in a spot in a radio station A and B, and assuming both stations charge the same, £100 per spot. What is the audience of the radio stations? Radio station A has 20,000 listeners in the age bracket of 18 to 40 years and 30,000 listeners in the bracket of 41 to 60 years. Radio B has 25,000 listeners in the bracket of 18 to 40 years and 15,000 listeners in the bracket to 41 to 60 years. So the total reach is 50,000 for Radio A and 40,000 for Radio B. Let's calculate the quantitative cost per mil. Price of the ad is £100 divided by 50,000 listeners times 1,000 is £2. So it will cost me £2 to reach 1,000 listeners of Radio A with my advertisement. Radio B is £100 cost divided by the reach 40,000 times 1,000 is 250. If we were to go with the quantitative cost per mil, we would choose Radio A, as Radio A is cheaper than Radio B and we do not want to pay so much money. But as I said earlier, we are caring about the qualitative cost per mil. Now if we calculate this, £100 cost for the spot on the radio, 20,000 is our target group, 18 to 40 years with Radio A, times 1,000 is £5. Radio B, £100 divided by 25,000 in our target group, times 1,000 is £4. Then when looking at the qualitative cost per mil, we should go with Radio B. The third objective and third task is media plan timing. On a very basic level, you can distinguish between continuous communication and concentrated communication. And how you time your media plan depends on your products or brands. Better, it depends on the buying behavior of your target group. So products that are in continuous use, like food and beverage, they should be communicated constantly, continuously. I can tell you it's a very bad idea to say, oh, this summer I won't eat. Don't do it. You eat all of the time, you need to get your energy in and you need to get hydrated throughout the whole year. So it makes sense to have advertising out throughout the whole year. But on other products and other use of products, like trunks, summer clothes, it is again not a good idea to go out in trunks when there's Christmas and when we have a white Christmas and it's snowing and it's freezing outside. And also, having winter clothes on in sweltering summer heat, not the best idea. It makes very much sense to have your communication, your advertising for summer clothes, like trunks, swimwear, have this out before the summer, and winter clothes, skiing, and all these things have this out before the winter. So for seasonal products, concentrated communication is a very good idea. What you normally find throughout the year, if you have a very aggregated view, is that throughout the year there's continuous advertising going on. But during the summer month, when there is the summer break, the intensity goes down. As lots of people on holidays, they are abroad and they want to relax, not go shopping and have all this stress all the time. So continues throughout the year. During the summer, the intensity of advertising reduces. But it bounces back just before Christmas. We have nothing else to do than buying presents and crashing our bank account. Before Christmas, end of November until a week before Christmas roughly, the advertising intensity becomes stronger. Finally, with timing, let's have a look at advertising pressure. Advertising pressure is normally perceived under conditions of low involvement. Just think you're watching the Rugby World Cup final or whatever great rugby match. During the first half, you will be fully focused and go with your team, with your nation, and be full on. Half time, you will not concentrate on the commercials. That is not where your attention goes. You're getting your beer, you're chatting with your mates about the match, and so forth. But the commercial on the telly is in the background, sort of sub or half consciously. You get the information in, but this is low involvement, and that means you need multiple contacts. Just contacting your target group once will not suffice. Make sure that you contact your target group a sufficient amount of time, and better to contact them once too often than once too less. Let's come to the communication design. So how to create the message and the form design of advertisements and other means of communication. I've heard very often from students, oh, I will never be able to do this, I'm just not creative. That is nonsense. I would say of myself, I'm not an intuitively creative person. I have a very analytic perspective on the world and way of working. But in my good old consulting days, I had to come up with advertisement ideas. I did not have to bring them technically into then advertisements, but I need to draw up the ideas. And as a very analytic person, it was possible when understanding what actually happens when a person has contact to an advertisement and how can I design towards it. So I do not want to see anyone saying, no, I'm not creative, I can't do this. Everyone can. And with this out of the way, I would like to give you the understanding so that you can approach designing communication advertisements. So the perspectives on designing communication. We should take the brand identity that we have designed on a strategic level as the foundation of our communication design, because in the end we want to strengthen this brand identity. So then we need to ask ourselves two key questions. What do we need to communicate, and how do we need to communicate this content? That means what primarily plays into what is our message, what is our content. That is creating and optimizing the message and the content of the advertisement. How we have to communicate, that primarily, not entirely exclusively, but primarily leads to how we create and optimize the design, the formal aspect, the form of our advertisement. Secondly, always think goal-oriented. What are our objectives with communication or with an advertisement, with a mean of communication? And how can we combine this with these perspectives on designing communication that I've just introduced? So what we want to do is, first, we want to make contact. So there should be contact between the advertisement and our target group. Then we want to guide the awareness of the target group, of the person who perceives the advertisement through the advertisement. This leads to, we want to deliver a message which in the end should improve the brand image. And everything that's going to the left, making contact, guiding awareness, is not exclusively, but rather design and form. How do we need to communicate? Everything that's going to the right, delivering our message through which we want to improve our brand image, is going in the direction, rather than the direction of message and content, the question, what do we want to communicate? Let me give you a few approaches how you can design and analyze advertisement. I've just said this. You should get the basics right. You should have an absolutely goal-oriented approach. Work towards your objectives and your brand identity. The greatest creativity does not help you at all if it's not directed to your goal, to improving your brand identity. Then, on this basis, develop some creative ideas that should be the foundation of your messages. Secondly is do the little things right. And there are a lot of social techniques, general rules that you can rely on. First, keep it simple and strong. Never be complex. I said before, advertisements normally are perceived under conditions of low involvement. If you have a super complex text out there, nobody will get it, nobody will even bother to read it. So keep it simple. Then you want to guide awareness. Use the figure ground perception or metaphor from psychology. So the classic from psychology, you see here, figure ground. What do we see here? Is it a vase or is it two faces? And again, your advertisement must stick out from the environment. So your advertisement is the figure, the environment where your advertisement is in is the ground. And also the elements within your advertisement need to stick out. That refers to the figure ground metaphor. Utilize perception priorities. Images are stronger than text. People are stronger than objects. Large objects are stronger than small objects, and so forth. There are more of these techniques and rules. I would just like to go to utilizing the primacy recency effect and the typical path of perceiving an advertisement. The primacy recency effect says, also comes from psychology, that we best remember the first thing we heard or saw and the last thing we've heard or have seen. So primacy and recency. And that is what you should keep in mind when designing an advertisement. On the right hand side, you see typical perception path through an advertisement. And that is also the reason why advertisements are structured like you see here, or principally most often structured like you see here. Have a look the next time you look in some magazine, newspaper, and check if you find this structure again. I bet you do. So when the perception comes in from the top left. Then I read the header or the message. Perception goes further to an image, then to a text, to the brand, and then I'm out. Primacy recency effect. What we want our target group to remember is the message we are giving them. And of course, they should associate this message with our brand recency. This is the reason why header, the core message, is on the top left, and the brand with which the message should be associated with is on the bottom right. Now you can analyze advertisements, and this is what I would like to show you. During the process of creating an advertisement, you can use the technique that I'm showing you in a moment, but you can also use it, of course, you can use it for existing advertisements. You look at two aspects: the awareness and the fit of the advertisement and its elements with your brand identity. In other words, how does the advertisement and its elements support, foster, improve your brand identity? The awareness of the advertisement and its elements is directly to predominantly improving the formal design, and the fit or the support of the brand identity is predominantly directed to improving the message and the content of the advertisement. The process of analyzing an advertisement has 3 steps. You define the process of perception and the elements within the advertisement. So, the example from before, the process of perception coming in from the top left, first element of perception, the header, going to the image, second element of the ad, going to the text, third element, going to the brand, and we're there. Then you evaluate all of these elements, in this case, header, image, text, brand, with regard to gaining awareness. So are they noticed? And do they improve and foster our brand identity? And from this, you derive options for improving the elements of the advertisement and then the overall advertisement. And here you can apply norm strategies for improvement. So, on the y-axis, we have the awareness or reach. Do people realize and perceive the elements of the advertisement? Do they actually remember them? Do they get them? They don't really notice them, yeah, it's okay, or they're strongly noticing them. On the x-axis is, do the elements of the advertisement improve the brand identity? Not so much to, yes, happy days, very much. They support, improve the brand identity. And then on the y-axis, the awareness reach, think back. That is what I've told you at the start of this part here. That is rather the design, the formal or optimization. So if we are performing poorly on this axis, on the y-axis, we should do something about the formal design. If we are performing poorly on the x-axis, on how the elements improve the brand identity, we should do something about the message and the content of this element. And everything what's on the bottom left of this matrix, throw it out. It doesn't help you at all. It's just confusing your target group when they make contact. We want to go to the top right, and therefore what is amber you should select and improve on the respective axis. I want to give you a simplified example. Let's assume we have this advertisement. It is a mortgage company, and they have their message as financial advice for your home. They have an image here, a castle with a bridge, a path leading to it. Then they have their slogan, we pave the way. And let's assume the company is called Great British Mortgage Company. So they have their label here. First, we determine the path of perception and the elements of the advertisement. I just said, you go in top left, then you have financial advice for your home. The slogan, you come to the image, the slogan, and you label the branding, and you're out. So let's analyze these. So our first element, financial advice for your home. That is highly noticeable. I just get in here. So, awareness, we get this. But is this good for the brand? That is very boring. If you have problems to sleep, some of the sleeping disorder, read this a few times and you will be cured. That is boring like hell and doesn't evoke any emotions. Second, the image. That's a very strong image. My home is my castle. Very strong, but so it's improving the brand, but the awareness, it's way too small. I don't really get this. I rush over this when I look at the advertisement. So brand identity is supporting the brand identity is good. Formal design, not so much. 3, we pave the way. It's a strong slogan. Yes, we pave the way to your home. To your home is your castle, to building your own nest. Happy days. And the branding, of course, happy, everybody notices it, and it supports the brand. Now, how could you improve the whole thing now? So the message, so slogan and branding were rather fine. We don't need to do much. Message, high awareness, formal design might be okay, but the content, that is not questionable, that is not good, that is boring. Image on the other side, brand identity, very good, but awareness, that is not great. So what you could come up with, you change the slogan to something like, your home is your castle. It evokes emotions and what people are striving after, building their own castle. So you have improved the message. You improve the image by just enlarging this, and now it's strong and is in line with your home is your castle, and we pave the way. You see the path leading to the castle. So we have, on the formal design side, we have improved the image. I hope I could give you a good overview of conventional marketing communication. Let's go to the unconventional part, to guerrilla marketing. And here I would like to introduce you to ambush, ambient, and virus marketing. But before I do this, let's have a look. What is guerrilla marketing? The historic background. That doesn't come from marketing, but guerrilla comes from warfare. That has always been there, guerrilla warfare, but it gained prominence during the Napoleonic Peninsular War. Napoleon Bonaparte thought it is a good idea to conquer Spain and have some of my friends' relatives on the Spanish throne. So he did, and the Spanish forces were no match for the strong French Grande Armée, so the Spaniards lost. But the Spaniards were not happy to be under French occupation or quasi-French occupation, so they launched guerrilla war, which is called guerrilla, is Spanish and is little war. Small ambushes, logistic hubs, supply columns, and then retreating as guerrilla warfare. And this principle you might apply to marketing. The background in marketing now. With time, over the decades after World War II, the competition increased massively on our markets. And we have very homogeneous brands and products. Now just think of the internet and the thousands of television channels you can receive. We're living in an age of information overload. With this, there was increased advertising. And quite, I would rather say the majority of classic advertisements is really boring. That means the effectiveness and efficiency of conventional marketing communication has decreased over the recent decades. So, some creative marketing fellows came up with guerrilla marketing as an alternative, unconventional approach. Keep it simple and strong and give you a written definition. Guerrilla marketing is a communication instrument that incorporates surprising elements and aims to reach and positively influence a large portion of a brand's target group at large cost. As this should be a very cool thing, Also, what it needs is a very cool effect or core, and that's the LSD effect. LSD stands for low cost, surprise, and diffusion. You want to create a campaign that is surprising, that gains attention through a disruptive approach which is incongruent with the expectations of your target group. The target group does not expect such a form of marketing communication, well, is surprised. Because of this surprise, they will share this experience, take a picture, post this on the Instagram, on the internet, and talk about this to others. Classical word of mouth. So the people perceiving your event, your instrument, they spread it around. That is the diffusion effect. That means you do not have such high media costs like booking the television or radio, booking advertisements there. So through the surprise effect, based on the surprise effect, you come to the diffusion effect. Based on these two, it's the low cost effect. You have relatively low design and media cost. And that is what guerrilla marketing aims for, a good ratio of communication effects to the cost you had to invest. Now, guerrilla marketing. What are the instruments? Some of the instruments, the major instruments are ambush marketing, ambient and sensation marketing, virus and buzz marketing. Ambush marketing. So utilizing major events, normally sports events, like the Football World Cup, the Rugby World Cup, Olympic Games, and so on. You're not an official sponsor, as this is bloody expensive, but you fill the gap competitors leave for you, and you have advertisements out or stage events that are related to this event. So think of the Football World Cup. So I actually don't know at the moment who is the sponsor, if it's Adidas, Nike, whoever. But it's surprising that the other brand, who's not an official sponsor, at the time of the World Cup has lots of commercials on the telly with major football stars playing around and holding their football shoes into the camera. So you do not have to pay for sponsoring. You have to pay, of course, for your normal advertising, but this is at a lower cost, and you try to live like a vampire of your competitor and this super sports or other event. Now, ambient and sensation marketing. What you do, you use public places and stage your brand there in surprising ways, what people do not expect. That is primarily going for surprise, like you have chips on a rooftop. So, place your or stage your communication event at places and in public places and in a way that is incongruent with the expectations of people, and therefore they're surprised and should hopefully be positively influenced. Then virus and buzz marketing is utilizing influencers. Typical example is all the influencers on the internet that are growing so much, so that ideally the target group itself communicates and shares your message. Very important. These three categories of guerrilla marketing are not mutually exclusive. They can be combined, and more often than not, they are combined. Let's have a look at the positive and negative effects, because guerrilla marketing can actually go quite south. So what you essentially are doing, you have a stimulus which the target group does not expect. and this stimulus must be in some way creative. That, the surprise, leads to awareness of the guerrilla campaign, the surprise effect. So the target group knows, oh, there was some special thing. And then so the brand awareness is increased indeed, but either the target group likes this campaign, this event, and says great stuff, or the target group does not like it because says that goes too far, that is embarrassing, that is offending, and other similar non-favorable reactions. Let's go with a positive evaluation. So your brand awareness is definitely increased, and ideally or normally your brand is associated with these positive results of perceiving and experiencing the guerrilla event. Then the attitude towards the brand is positively strengthened. That normally should lead to increased purchases and usage of the brand, and of word of mouth, recommendations of the brand and the campaign. Happy days, then you've done something right. But if you offend people, then it's not the best. Your brand is associated with the campaign, so the attitude of the people will turn negative towards your brand. And then, of course, they won't buy your brand so often anymore. And they will also, because it was such a surprising thing, they will tell that was nasty. They will tell others that was a horrible campaign and it must be a horrible brand. So it's a thin line from successful guerrilla marketing to unsuccessful guerrilla marketing. And therefore, the advice for practice is, it's easier said than done, but it is, go one step too far, but not two. And integrate this approach, going one step too far, but not too far, integrate these elements of guerrilla marketing into your conventional marketing communication. I said earlier, with regard to conventional marketing communication, most of it is rather boring, and then it has no effect whatsoever. But be careful, you might run into a trap, and then this even might lead to a shitstorm or even legal problems. Let's come to online marketing. Of course, you can combine online marketing with all the other instruments of communication. But here I want to have a rather pure online marketing or pure online world perspective to make clear what are the essentials of online marketing. Again, in the real world, you should combine this, most likely, you should combine this with offline marketing communication. What I'm showing you now, it's not entirely matching one-to-one, but it's based in parts on what I think a very good book, which is E-Marketing, The Essential Guide to Marketing in a Digital World, 7th edition. That is a very good book to have a look at just the online world and online marketing world. So what are you doing when you're in online business? At the core of your online business, typically, not necessarily, but typically, there is a website or an online shop. That's the core of your online business. So here you need to have a top web design and search engine optimizing. Just a website won't help you. You need traffic there. You need to get users to your website. So you might do some advertising, search advertising, online advertising, social media advertising to drive traffic to your website or your online shop. Furthermore, you do not really want to lose your users and your customers. You want to retain them. Therefore, you should go for online customer relationship management to retain and partly drive traffic to your website, to your online business. And there you have content marketing, social media marketing, and direct marketing. Let me start with the core of the business, the website or the online shop. What you should do when designing a website, you should first and foremost analyze and define your users, the users of your website, and you should understand them. That means, who is my user? What are the needs and wants of the user when they're coming to a website? And what are the digital competencies of my users? Based on this, you can determine the content of your website. Again, to what end do the users come to this website? So that is what information you need to give them. But you also need to ask yourself, what actually do we want the user to do? Most likely you want them to buy something. That might not be the same why the user comes to your website and what you would like the user to do. Then you define the website structure. You have a sitemap, and then you translate your sitemap into a static or a dynamic website. Static websites, they make sense when you are not updating your content too often. Dynamic websites with content management systems, you're frequently updating the website, adding new content. And you find here a few examples of content management systems like Drupal, Joomla, WordPress. It is, at the start everything is tough to get this set up. But once it is set up, it's very easy to handle and to manage in the background. That is actually, everyone can do this. You do not need to have massive digital competencies. At last, you design the layout of your website. So you define a website and brand guidelines with fonts, colors, images, and so on. And you create your online layout. That might be a bit more of an issue. I would say content management system, that is easily done. The layout is often the tough part. Because there quite often, if you want to have a very individual thing, you need to know some coding, something you do not need with a content management system. So for the website layout, let me give you some rules of thumb. Have lots of empty space. Less is more. Don't confuse the user of your website with too much information in. Give your user fewer options. Don't make it too complex. Use plain language. Again, don't make it too complex, and stick to conventions. We're all lazy, and we're as human beings, and we're not good getting into new stuff. So links are traditionally blue and underlined. The navigation is normally at the top or on the left. There might be the odd one out that you try some super creative new structure and design, but as a rule of thumb, keep on the proven tracks. When you have your website there, and when designing your website, you should optimize your website for search engines so that Google or other search engines find your website and can recommend your website to internet users. There are two approaches. White hat, that is in accordance to search engine guidelines, and black hat, you try to trick the engine and try to outsmart the search engine. For instance, 15-20 years ago, it was link building. You give a company some money and they have, within a month, they have 2,000 links pointing to your website. So, black hat is never do this. The search engine will be smarter than you with this regard, and you will be punished, and you might be even thrown out of the search results that the engine gives out. So always go with Whitehead. Never try to trick Google or any other search engine. What you can do is on-page optimization. That means you create a website with a structure that makes it easy for the search engine to find. And that normally means clear structure, not any weird complex linkage, but clear structure with clear links and sub sites and so on, or sub pages. You might integrate keywords into your content to make your website more attractive for search engines, so that some word is more often repeated in a text than you would normally do if you write a normal text like term paper. Then you need to find out what are the keywords people are typing into the search engines like Google, what are they searching for, and this word is a few times more often in your text. Again, I like to caution you, not that this is just over and over this keyword, that goes towards black hat. I would, as a rule of thumb, still recommend write for humans first, and then it's for search engines second. I've even heard from some online marketeers, they told me they forget about the keyword writing. They only write for humans anymore. They do not write anything with keywords optimization for search engines. On the off-page optimization, this is all about links. The search engines think the more links are pointing to your website, the more important is the website and the more relevance it has. So, placing external links, so links on other websites or social media, that might help you. But again, excessive link building has black hat. Excessive link building that does not actually genuine users and just for the search engine will get you punished, most likely. And then one way is content is king. You have great content on your website so that others in the online world say, great, if I link to the site, I will provide my users, the users of my website, with an additional benefit. So great content attracts links. And I would strongly suggest follow content is king. Create great content on your website and the links will come automatically. It will take time, but they will come automatically. Now advertising, driving traffic to your website. What we can do is search engine advertising, and there you define what you do. What you have to do is to find your landing page to which the advertisement should lead, determine the budget, so how much would you like to pay per click. Then you set the keywords under which your advertisement should appear. So if someone types in XYZ and Google or another search engine, should your advertisement with XYZ appear? And then of course you need your advertisement and you need to write a short, concise message with a compelling call for action. And these search engine advertisements, they come up, you've probably seen on the internet, if you put something in a search engine, on the top there's a sponsored, normally it's labeled sponsored, you have your ads, and then comes the organic results. And the search engine advertisements will come up somewhere here. Online social media advertising. Principally is not too different from search engine advertising, but you can do more. You can also have images, even videos and so forth. So you need to choose websites or social media channels for your advertising. You should look if the user of a website or a social media channel is in the target group of your brand. If so, happy days. Secondly, you should check if the image of the website or social media channel is similar to the image of your brand. If so, happy days, you can use this way or this channel. If not, not a good idea. How to place advertisements there. You can, of course, contact a website owner directly. But more and more, this world becomes more and more professional, and there are online media agencies very active. Furthermore, this is especially for social media. Furthermore, you have advertising platforms like Google Ads, and you can go through social media sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. Then the last subsection for the online marketing part, online marketing relationship management, content, social media, and direct marketing. Let's have a look at content marketing first. Content marketing is a marketing technique of creating and distributing relevant and valuable content to attract, acquire, and engage a clearly defined and understood target audience, with the objective of driving profitable customer action. So important is the user orientation of content marketing. The first priority is you need to create and publish content that has value for the user in itself. Not starting from the perspective of your brand or you want to sell something. Create content, and this content alone has a value to customers or users. Secondly, only then you look, how can I convert users from this content I'm providing to be customers buying my brand? This is important. Content marketing is not just a communication channel through which you tell people how great your brand is. It is rather a valuable product in itself. And then you attach the conversion to buying your brand. Secondly, you have a production-oriented approach to content management. Understand yourself like a publisher, like a newspaper, a television station, like the classic publishers, and not like a marketeer. Again, that goes in line with the content itself must be of value and is not just an advertisement. You should integrate all the relevant business units into the publishing process. There might be research and development, production, sales, customer services, and so on. So it is a cross-department or departmental approach that you have here. That makes content marketing not something you can just have a content manager and he's writing happily ever after. That is a bit more to it if you do it right. And arguably the best approach with content management is the always on strategy. Always on means you are constantly publishing content in your blog, in your website, through your social media channels, which channels you use. And over time, with the always on approach, the user engagement and the relationship quality between the user of your content and you will increase. That might take time, and that might not always be a linear process, but rather a curve that takes time to grow. And you can add this always on approach through campaigns that should drive traffic to your core operations online, as I said, be it your website, a social media channel, your blog, what have you. These campaigns might be advertising, online advertising, search engine advertising that I've mentioned earlier. Now, social media marketing and direct marketing. You're going through channels like YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so forth. And you have your own account there. The golden rule is you should understand social media marketing as a conversation interaction, a one-to-one medium, not as a mass medium. Think of yourself when you're using the internet. It's rather a one-one thing. It's a dialogue and not like on the telly or in the cinema. It is not a mass communication thing. How users experience the internet. And that also means don't ignore any posts or any comments, any questions that are directed to you on your social media channels. Reply to virtually all of them. Now, what happens on social media, what you want to have is you want to start a communication there, and then it should go on and on and on, and the users should keep the momentum up. So what do you do in certain direction situations? Assume all posts that you find on your social media channel are positive. Happy days. Now your communication on social media should focus on driving traffic to your business to make money. If all of the posts you find on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever you're using, are neutral, that is Amber Alert. You should focus on improving your brand image before you are perceived as being absolutely boring and nobody pays attention anymore. Finally, if there are only negative posts, in the midst of a shitstorm, very unhappy days, there's red alert and all hands on deck. Your communication should focus on immediately fixing whatever problem is there to prevent further loss of image and of users, not that you fall into the trap of loss escalation. Direct marketing then might be something like email marketing. And with the example of email marketing, that is not for acquiring customers, that is for improving customer relationships, the relationships with existing customers. And therefore you want to initiate repeated sales or added sales, go on the cross-selling direction. The principle is here: you only send messages and emails to subscribed users, and you have to offer the option to unsubscribe. This mass email thing, sending out to anyone, that worked perhaps in the early days of the internet. Nowadays, don't do this. And very important, your content of your emails must be valuable and exclusive. You can't have this out anywhere. Because otherwise, why would I read with all the flooding of emails? Why would I take the time to read something unimportant? I wouldn't. So it must be the content of your emails you send out must be of high value. It must be exclusive. So much, a very, very brief overview to online marketing, and I hope I could give you an idea. Finally, we're going to personal selling. Personal selling is acquiring customers, it is closing sales deals, and a bit more establishing strong customer relationships. That means you offer additional services through the means of direct personal contact. So it is on the one hand closing deals, but do not understand your sales force as just they should make a deal and then they're out. It's a good idea that they are, even after the deal is done, in contact with your target group and establish a strong relationship so that there are more purchases again. So what's the process of personal selling? The sales force should identify possible customers. And then it is not just going to your possible customers and trying to sell without being prepared. All battles are won in preparation. So it's pre-contact intelligence. You learn as much as possible about the customer. Who is he? How is he ticking? What is his needs and wants? Then you establish first contact and form a relationship. You then understand, if you will really understand, the customer's problems, needs, and also their restrictions. Based on this knowledge, you present a solution for the customer's problems and show him your needs will be fulfilled, you will be happy. Quite often there will be negotiations, as the customer potentially doesn't want to pay the price you would like to have. So you need to overcome some objections, and if you're successful, you close the deal. As I said earlier, don't leave it at this and say, oh, happy days, I got my great commission. Follow up. You would like to have additional sales, and you also would not be too sad if the customer is recommending you to others. Let's come to the sales force. What kind of structure can you give your sales force? So it's a regional or geographic structure. That makes sense if your target group is regionally or geographically dispersed. So you often find with international companies, like we have in North America, South America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Far East, and so forth. You can have a product-focused structure. That makes very much sense for complex and non-self-explanatory products. Think of a fighter jet or a power plant. Probably you should explain to your customer, and you should have an understanding. As a salesperson, you should have an understanding of the product so that you can explain to your potential customer what his or her benefits will be. Finally, a customer-focused approach, that is key account management, especially for major customers. Think of the automotive industry, suppliers of key players in the automotive industry. They will have key account managers, actually teams of key account managers that deal exclusively with Mercedes, Toyota, VW, Renault, BMW, and whatever producer, whatever car brand you have. However, the larger a company gets, you normally do not find a clear-cut geographic, product focus, or customer focus structure. What you quite often find, and more often than not, is a matrix organization of your sales force. That is, if you have complex, non-self-explanatory products and your target group is geographically dispersed, like being active all over the world. Then you have a manager and a team responsible for the products, and a manager with his team responsible for the regions. The third perspective here for the sales force structure is outbound and inbound sales. Probably most of us intuitively think, oh, Salesforce, yes, they go out, they contact the potential customers and approach them. No, this might be there very often, probably in the majority this is the case, but there's also inbound sales. Outbound, the classic, Salesforce goes out, contacts the customer, but the customer might also call in and ask for your products. So never forget, it might be necessary or a good idea to have an inbound sales force and then try to attract your customers through other means like advertising and so forth. How large should your sales force be, and how should you select your sales force, your sales persons? Sales force size. You look at the number of potential customers in your target group segments. Then you try to estimate how often do our target group members need to be contacted so that it comes to a deal. So how many calls of the sales force are required to close a deal? There's members of target group, a number of target group members, times required calls to close a deal. is the total calls that have to be made per deal. So number of calls, a number of potential customers, times average calls. So then you look at how many calls can a salesperson do per year. And then it is total calls per year divided by possible number of calls per year per salesperson, and you have your sales force size. Let me give you an example. So we have three target groups, target group A, B, and C. Within target group A, there are 1,000 potential customers, B 2, and C there are 4,000 customers. We know from experience that we need 20 calls to have an effect or close a deal with our 1,000 customers from target group A, or exactly with one customer from target group A. We need 10 calls to close a deal with a customer or potential customer from B, and 5 calls for target group C. 20 times 1,000 is 20,000, 10 times 20 again 20,000, and 5 times 4,000 is 20,000 again. So we need to make 60 calls per year. 60,000 calls per year. Let's assume one salesperson can do 1,000 calls per year, and 60,000 divided by 1,000 is 60. Then our sales force should consist of 60 people. How should we select our sales force, our salesmen and saleswomen? First is customer knowledge. And I would say this is the most important part, but this is my personal view. The sales force, the salespeople need to know the customer. They need to understand their needs and wants and the objectives of the customer and how to talk to the customer. And that becomes more and more important when you go into international business, as we're all living in different cultures. A British person is different, thinks different, acts different than an Indian or Vietnamese person. Also, Swede is very much different than an Italian. So, have someone with customer knowledge who understands the needs and wants and how the customer ticks. But the salesperson should also have a knowledge of the product and the technology behind. So, a basic understanding, what can the technology do? That is not of any harm if the salesperson has it. And finally, definitely social skills. One could say sales skills, empathy, understanding and feeling how the potential customer ticks, and then the art of persuading the customer to buy. Finally, the sales force compensation. What you can do is a fixed salary. So the people who advocate for a fixed salary say it's a stronger motivation to build customer relationships in a team effort. But it is a weaker motivation to individual close deals, to put a bit more effort, a bit more oomph in it. Then there's the pure variable salary, commissions and bonuses. That is a very strong motivation to individual close deals, to put all my effort in. But I'm sort of a one-man army. I'm on my own on my sales tours. I don't want anyone else to know what I'm doing. I don't want to share my knowledge. So the motivation to build long-term relationships between the company and the customer and go for a team effort is not very high. You're running the risk that the salesperson tries to bind the customer to himself and not to the company. So what you normally find to mitigate the weaknesses of the two aforementioned approaches, but still have the strength, is a combination of fixed and variable salary. So you have a basic salary, and then with each deal you close, you get some extra bonus paid. And finally, this is the main part, but don't underestimate expenses like a company car, like hotel stays and so on, travel and entertaining. That is actually a nice thing to have, and it might be necessary to close the deal, it is often not the worst of things to invite a customer to dinner. Now, that was it for sales. Not only for sales, that was the last section of this crash course. We're at the end. I say thank you for your attention. I hope I could give you some insights into marketing, and I wish you all the best and loads of success in your own marketing endeavors, be it as a student at university, as a lecturer, as a researcher, and of course as a practitioner in the real world. For now, again, all the best and bye-bye.